introduction of Laravel. Now, if you've watched my last video, you must have learned the necessary things you need to install for you to get started with your Laravel project and what exactly Laravel is and all of that. So right now that you've installed everything, you've installed your IDE, is that you go for Sublime or you go for VS Code, a lot of them there. But in my last video I taught you how to install the IDE, that is VS Code. So now that you've done all of that and installed the Laravel install, let's proceed to without wasting much of our time, let's proceed to creating a Laravel project. Okay, first thing, remember to run your Composer Global Require Laravel installer, which I have done already. Then after that, write Laravel new, the name of the project you want to install. So for you to confirm that Laravel installer has been installed, type Laravel on your terminal or command prompt, right? Yeah. Then Laravel, this is what shows. My Laravel installer version is 5.6.0. Now that I've seen that it's installed, I will create a Laravel project. I will call it Laravel new Laravel tutorial. So that is the name of my Laravel project. So would you like to install a starter kit? No. Which testing framework would you use? Now, what is this testing we are talking about? When you are done writing a project, either the web project or the API, because Laravel is web-based and API-based, either of that. If you are writing for a company that doesn't use, that actually don't know how to test a code that is written in Laravel, you could just write a test for each of your endpoints or each of your controller, call it endpoints. Write a code or a test unit for each of them, so when the company or the person you are sending the project to opens it, all they could just do is type Laravel PHP artisan test, and it will show 100%, showing that it will go around, test all your endpoints and give them either 100%, 75%. If there is an error, it shows them an error, so they will now revert back to you and say there is an error. So that way it is not hard for them to go through your project, even though they are not Laravel developers. So that is what this testing unit is for. So there is PEST and there is PHP unit, and me, I mostly use PHP unit. And some company I've worked for, I've written tests for them using PHP unit. So I advise we go for PHP unit. So would you like to initialize a Git repository? No. What is this Git repository? You know, when you are done coding, normally the cloud storage for developers are mostly there's GitHub and there's GitLab. So GitHub is more popular. So the moment you say yes to initialize a Git repository, it automatically initialize a Git repository for you in the GitHub. So when you are done, you don't need to start. If you want to push it to GitHub, you don't need to start doing Git init. You just git add, commit, and push it to go and store on the GitHub. So now we do not need any of this. Now let's wait for it to create. It is creating the Laravel project for us. Okay. So it's asking before it doesn't run migration. Seems like it's now running migrations even while creating. Okay, so which database application do I use? I'm using MySQL. You can use Postgres, MariaDB based on what you installed. So mine, I installed XAMPP, so I'm using MySQL. So default database of data. Would you like to run the default database migration? Should I say yes or no? Yes. The database does not exist. Would you like to create it? I don't really know. I want to, for now, no. Leave it for me. Okay. All these questions asked me they might not ask you the same, but because it's the updated Laravel version, that's why they're asking me all of these things. They set it up all for me even before I create it, so I don't have to have issues. So now that I'm done installing, let's move over to which directory exactly did I create? Oh wow. I created my Laravel tutorial project in another directory. So move over to the VS Code, open a new window. I believe you must have created your Laravel tutorial project by now. Please, I created mine in a different directory. Be sure to create yours in a directory that you can easily access. Normally all my Laravel projects are in desktop Laravel project directory, but now that I created in a new directory, I have to locate it. So I've opened a new window. Where is the next thing? Open folder to find my project. Open folder. Okay, this is where it is created. You can see it here. Laravel tutorial. Click on it. Boom, it is opened. Everything is open. Let me enlarge this so you understand. Okay, now let's you know something. If you just opened your Laravel tutorial project on VS Code for the first time, this might not be how your folders will look. The folder that has blue color and everything looks organized, it might not be. So if that is not the case and you want it to look just like mine, check. You can see where I'm keeping my cursor. There is extensions. Click on it, and if you can't find extension in that way, there is always extension. I think it's normally at the top if you're using Windows. So here you type VS Code great icon. VS Code great icon. Okay, here it is, the first one, great icon. When you click on it, install it, and boom, everything will look just this way. It makes the folders looks very good. So now that that is done, let's proceed in explaining the structures of Laravel. What you are seeing here is just the structures of Laravel. There is nothing much here. This is the structure of Laravel. Okay, let me start from the most important folders in Laravel. Now it is the app folder. Inside the app folder, we have what we call controllers, HTTP. Then inside the HTTP, you have what we call controllers. Just so you know, Laravel has the model view. It follows the model view controller design pattern. So in the app, you have the model, you have the controller, and the view is in the resources. So how does this work? The controller is where you write your code, where you write the code that you need. That is the controller. Where you write your code, that is what the controller, the source code, whatever it is. Then the model is an instance of the database, of the table. Now if you create a table, if you have a table, but in Laravel, if you want to insert into that table or query that table, you cannot call the name of that table directly. So that means every table in the database has a model here. And how do you find the model for a particular table? If your table's name is users, the model name will be user. It's just singular and plural. So if in a case whereby your model name here is user and you want this model to be referring to a table called users, maybe students table, all you just have to do, you can see the fillable, this, that. All you just have to do is when you come here, you put protected, then table, you understand this better, and then the name of that database you want it to refer to. All of this you understand better when we start coding. Just know the structure. So now in other words, I'm saying that model is an instance of a table. You use model to reach out to a table in the database. So for you to query a table, insert, update, delete, get whatever information you want to get from a particular table, you need the model. That is what this model is here for. Then the controller is you writing your code. That is where you put in all the PHP code you want to write, is in the controller. And then these providers are not usually that much. There's nothing much to know about it, but the more you proceed, the more you understand it. Now we have bootstrap config. Okay, database. This is another important folder you need to know about. Now there is something called something that Laravel helps you to do, right? If it's called PHP, you create all of your tables manually in the PHP admin. But here in the Laravel, you don't need to suffer like that. As you just created a new project and you know you want students table, course table, lecturers table, any more tables, just come here, run PHP artisan, make migration, right? So when you create migrations, it appears this way. or this is already the one that Laravel created, it will appear like this. Let's say we take out this, right? It just appear like this. All of this will not be there, right? So once it appears like this, inside of it you just start writing the columns. If you want the student table to have the name, department, wage number, age, gender, you just put all of them here. Same for each of your tables. When you are done creating all the migrations and tables, migration is the table, right? So when you are done creating all of them using the php artisan command, you put in all the columns you want and you just run php artisan migrate. All these tables automatically goes into the php admin. You don't need to start editing, right? You don't need to start suffering yourself creating tables manually in the php admin. And that is just it. Everything set and done. And that is what the migration is. The factories is used to create a dummy data. If you want to automatically, maybe when you run a PHP and migrate, you want your users table to be filled with data. I think you do that with factory. Not that I think that is what it is used for, but the more you go into this Laravel project and work with it, the more you understand the features, right? So now we have the public folder. I won't be explaining much on that, but just know that if peradventure you are coding or you are writing a project that requires you to maybe buy a template or write JavaScript or CSS, code it by yourself, it is in this public folder you put it in and access it with assets underscore something. So that being said, you now come over to the resources. We have what we call the folder resources, another important folder, which is the control model view or model view controller. So now this is the view. You can create many views here. The views is where what you show to the world, right? If you want to write, if you have a registration form, it is in the views you put the registration form. Then when they fill it and click on register, you now take them to where? To the controller. Write the code, then get information from the model or get the model to use and save that details you get from the views into the database, right? So that is it. Model view what? Controller. That is how it works. The view is what you show to the world. And then the next thing is the route. By default before, Laravel has actually upgraded. This is now Laravel 11. When it was Laravel 10, when you create a Laravel project, you get API. And I think I updated my Laravel version. People that have not updated, you will not be getting we will still be getting api.php, web.php, and console.php, right? So now let me explain this route. When I said before, I made mention of Laravel has web-based and API-based. This is what I meant. If you are writing a project that, let's say you are building a crude application, users can save data, they can update it, they can delete it, they can edit it. That is crude application, right? So for them to do any of those, you give them you display a form for them in the database where they can fill it and create the form, and then they can see it, in the browser. You display a form in the browser for them, right? They can fill that form in the browser and click on submit. They've saved it. They can see edit in beside the form, and they can click on it. All of this is in the browser. So if this is what you are doing and you want them to be seeing it in the browser, all the routes that will lead to the controller will be in the web.php, right? So if it's a case whereby you don't want it to be in the browser, you are writing an API, somebody tells you write an API for me, just provide the APIs, leave the rest. The front end developers will handle the rest, right? All the routes containing that will be in the api.php. So now that Laravel is no longer putting it in the route, you can manually create it yourself, api.php, right? So you can manually create that yourself, api.php. And everything. And how do they test the postman, the API you wrote, and know if it's actually accepting the form input and all of that? Since you are not displaying it in the browser and users are not seeing it to put in anything, you make use of what we call postman. This is it. You make use of what we call what? Postman. So in the postman there is a body. Here you can just put in the form input you want to send, and then you accept it in the controller, and that is it for you. So that is what route is. Route is the direction or the directory that leads to the controller, from the controller to the view, and then perform all of those things you want it to perform. In fact, route is just a directory that points the viewer to where they want to go to. Now we have another important one, is the test. Like I told you when I was explaining the test unit, there is a test unit and there is a that is PHP unit, and there is a pest. All of this is used to write a test. Let's assume I wrote an endpoint that allows users to register, and another one that allows users to log in, and I'm giving it to somebody, told me to write it, and the person doesn't even know how to run a Laravel project, and the person cannot even know whether the Laravel project is fine or not, and I'm not there to show it to that person. When I'm done writing that endpoint or that code, I come here, create a test file like this, test case file. Can create another test file and give it my name, any name I want to. Then inside it I will write a test that will test those endpoints that I wrote, so that when I run a command php artisan test, it will test all of those things and return 100% for me. That means I know that everything is working. When I send it to that person, I say, okay, just run this command php artisan test and see. If the person runs it and it brings out, you can bring out an error if there's an error, or if everything works fine, it brings out 100. The person now confirm that yes, this endpoint you provided is working. Let me now send it over to the people that will make use of it. So that's what this test is all about. We have the vendor folder is important. Whatever package you install is also being found in the vendor folder. Without the vendor folder, this project will not run. Laravel itself will not run. I think it's the backbone of the Laravel project. Not I think, that is what it is. So we now have what else is important? The .env folder. This .env folder, in core PHP, I don't know if you have an idea of core PHP. You write a normal code to connect to database, but in .env you don't need to write the code. Everything is already stated here for you. If you can see, if you scroll down, look down, you see the DB connection, DB host, DB port, database, username and password. Yes. So when you want to connect, if you want to connect from your project to the database, you make use of the .env. Just come here, put in the DB connection. Is it Postgres you're using on MySQL? Put it here, the host, the DB port, and all of that. You connect to your database. And if you have any other packages like RabbitMQ you want to use in your project, you put in their credentials and the .env. And this .env, there is example. So in case if you pull your project from GitHub, because by default env doesn't upload to GitHub. So when you pull a project from GitHub, you just create a new .env file and copy this example and paste there, and then start up. Right, and when you copy it, you don't get app key. You just write php artisan key generate. This key generates for you. So the next important file you need to know is git ignore. Right, when you're uploading to GitHub, when you're pushing this project to GitHub, there are some folders that doesn't go to GitHub, and those projects, just like if you want any of these folders not to go to GitHub, just come and put it in git ignore. Once you push to Git, it will not go to Git. So like vendor.env and all of this doesn't go to GitHub. You can see them here. And the nothing but the least important one I need you to know about is the composer.json. Right, every package you install, the versions of it are stored in the composer.json here. So that is just it. Before I forget, there is an anti-sam file. In Laravel, whatever command you want to run in Laravel, you must start with php anti-sam. Apart from composer packages you install with composer, right, you must start with php anti-sam. So that anti-sam command will never work if this anti-sam file is not found in your project. So that is basically the structure of Laravel. Just know that you find your controller and your model in the app, you find your migration or database in the database, you find your view in the resources, and your .env is used for connection to database and many other credentials or packages you want to access to. And these are the most important ones you constantly see yourself using as a Laravel developer and as a beginner. So this is just the structure of Laravel. In our next class, we'll be starting to code, so that The more you code, the more you understand the structure of Laravel. The more, even the ones I explained that I did not explain to your test, you begin to understand it yourself and give it a proper meaning and definition, right? Okay, so guys, thank you, and I really hope I was able to enlighten you more and be able to take you around the structures of Laravel. Thank you very much for attending this class.